Welcome. I'm so happy to be here at the Bhakti Center, and that's a lot saying for someone who lives in Vrindavan. But this is kind of my life. I love this, just teaching the Shastra, the sacred texts. And it is the way in which we become purified and change our hearts. Our mind is composed of thoughts, and some are bad thoughts, and some are good thoughts. And the bad thoughts, when they're dwelled on and acted upon, they degrade the mind to a lower mode of contentment and perception, actually. And good thoughts elevate the mind, and good actions elevate the mind. So, how do you change the mind? And the way you change the mind is by good ideas. And good ideas, they come from the sacred texts. And when you dwell on them, and you think about them, and you understand them, and you apply them, then they become the thoughts in your mind. And my experience is very, very effective. I can even see in this class, I see how people advance by coming to things like this and how they change. So this is really what my main seva is. Bhakti is best expressed by seva, which means loving responsiveness to God through the faculties of the mind, body, and words. So this is my seva. This is how I express my bhakti, wherever I do, to try to study and teach and share it in this way. And I also think it gives an authenticity to the Bhakti Center. The Bhakti Center is just wonderful. The way it's going now, it's just amazing how it's developing. But I'm just sharing my heart, my own personal contribution. There should be someone versed in Shastra. This is what a spiritual center is, where people talk and people learn, etc. And so we're going to do that today on this particular text. First, I will direct traffic, because I set it up. I don't know how it should be. There are... Anybody doesn't have a seat, there are bolsters in the back. Carla, do you need something to sit on? You're good? Okay, that's good. Bryn, if you prefer to sit on the floor, then you can just move the chair in the back and sit there. You're okay. Okay, good. And very authentic today for the class. I like that too. Okay, and this is the book we'll be studying on. I understand that they're out of them downstairs. Satya Hari, he bought some, and he's out of them. He distributed them here. But I think if you go to krishna.com, you can probably even online even download the books or something. So that's going to be the particular text. You can catch up with text 1. I'm going to mostly explain it in the class. And then I'll give the reading assignment for next week will be text 2. And I'll also send some notes from a study guide that I saw. And in the class, I'm going to discuss, I remember one of the PowerPoint things, it was the learning objectives. But, okay, we'll offer some prayers. Okay. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Śrī Caitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam dadati sapadantikam vanchakalpa turubhyascha kripa sindhu bhayevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasade Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. We have a Facebook group that you can sign up for. The class, I'm just be a little practical things here. The class will be videoed every week, because one of the things about being in New York City, it's very rare that someone could come to all the classes. There's generally one wedding or bar mitzvah, or I've already got word about that people have to go to. So, and on that I'll also post a PowerPoint presentation I make. We'll also post the audio, so you can kind of follow up on that if you like. But before that, Rati, you can go to the meditation. Yeah. I'm using Prabhupada's book, but a nice commentary that I also used that Satya Hari gave me was by one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, who is a great scholar. So sometimes I'll use quotes from him.
If you want one, I can give you one.
Okay. He's a very generous person, and he likes to distribute books. So this is just a quote from later on. You know, in the book, it's a very, very practical book. I don't want to get ahead of myself and explain what it is, because I want to do this, but it's really a summary of practical application of bhakti. And it has, next week we're going to discuss what are the obstacles, there's then the verse after that, what are the 6 things that enhance bhakti, and then the verse after that is what are the 6 types of loving exchanges, and then there's things about the holy name and Guru Tattva, and then what is the highest thing in bhakti, and it's very, very practical. I guess I will skip ahead a little bit. You know, it's written by the main teacher in our line, who is a genius, and he put the teachings of our line into 11 verses in poetry, and so this is from about enthusiasm, how important it is to have enthusiasm in bhakti, and enthusiasm means not enthusiastic, but for the right thing. And the right thing is to want direction of truth to guide your life, rather than just your desires. I make this point: your desires may be the truth, and within the truth, it accommodates a lot of your desires. But your desires are the truth, not because they're your desires. They're the desires because they conform to some type of standard of truth, some absolute truth. And really, bhakti is when you want that. That's really, when you want to be guided by something higher than just I'm in the center and what I want. And that is a very, very great thing. And most people do not have it. It's a very, very special thing. And I want to put you in the context of this class. I want to put who you are and what you're doing here. And it's actually a very, very special thing. And I'm going to say this almost like an evangelical preacher. I'm going to even repeat it 3 times, you know? When God decides that you're ready to get out of the material world, he sends you sadhu sangha, association of saintly people. Okay, I'm going to repeat that again.
Preach it, Ramon.
What is that?
I said, preach.
You know, one thing is, I really better tone it down because Julie's already enthusiastic. If I fire up Julie, I don't know if we'll be able to keep the sobriety of the class. So I'll repeat it again. When God decides that you're ready to get out of the material world, and you know, everyone here is connected to a spiritual tradition. Mainly, probably, many of you first come through yoga. It's a spiritual objective. There's something higher than all this, and that's being situated in yourself eternally. That's called moksha or liberation. Most people are not interested in it. So somehow or other, when God decides that you're ready, then he sends you sadhu sangha. And that is not an ordinary thing. And it shouldn't be taken cheaply. And basically, that's what this class is about. It's about people, I sound like it's strange, who God chose. Is this like a Jewish class now, the chosen people? It's about people who God chose. And I always meditate on that, why, or how he prepares one. And look at the context of the history. I was looking at this Sanskrit word, it's called a bhava. It means non-existent or something. But the concept is there are some things that are eternal and end, and there are some things that are eternal and never end. Can someone think of something that's eternal that ends? Something that's been going on forever and ends.
Karma?
What?
Karma?
Karma. In other words, your suffering has gone on forever. There's no beginning to it. I just want to put you in the context of the relevance of sacred texts. That's why I enjoy when you came in. You said, I'm very excited. I know about the book. I said, it's going to be heavy, Joy. She said, I like that. She said, I don't know why my name is Joy. I like everything so heavy. But that's what I'm saying. When it ends, and this is how it ends, because what does sadhu sangha mean? Sadhu sangha means to hear the sacred text from people who studied and realized them. Otherwise, it's not just looking at someone, and it's actually hearing from them. And so, just talk about your personal history, how you got here. And this is what the way I kind of look at things is everything that happens to us is just positioning ourselves so we can open our mind to experience the soul. And the experience of the soul, that drop of divine love, bhakti, some special transcendent joy that stirs in your heart, that flourishing of the consciousness, that happens at a time. But most people, it doesn't happen because their mind is not open for it. And I'll give you the example. Sometimes I walk down to Union Square sometimes, and they have their kirtan. And what a sacrifice they're actually making. Hurricane Sandy. I mean, now they stayed in that day, but besides that, they're very dedicated. And it's bhakti, because what is kirtan? Kirtan is when this bhava, or love in your heart, is expressed through the discipline of music. And so what happens is, I watch, people are coming out of the subways, right? People are coming out of the subways, and people are walking by, and some people just most people in New York are receptive, but some people just kind of just walk by, right? And kind of even give a little head twist, like scorn, I'm better than them. And and then some person comes up from the subway and goes like this. And then 15, 20 minutes later, and I kind of feel, wow, it's happening. It's happening. Forever they were in suffering, and now a drop of divine love is entering their hearts, and now it begins. And somehow or other, God decided that they're ready for this, because He's moving everything around. So I'm saying, what makes one that? And I'm just thinking, even in my own life, how my mind opens more and more to spiritual experience. A lot by the suffering you undergo, the difficulties, the trouble. Everything is just moving things around. If you create the mind, I look at it as an experience of the soul, and I look at it as an opening in the mind that allows the experience of an object or act of devotion to touch one's heart. And it's a very, very special thing. It's a very, very special thing. And what the study of the Shastra is, the sacred texts, is to keep that opening, or increase that opening, for the holy name, which is for kirtan, which is the main way in which the heart stirs, but for the deities, the forms of God, for the books of God, for the people of God, for the places of God, to keep it open. And not only open, but when you hear the text is God itself. It's the form of God in sound. So it also has that experience on your heart. And it also teaches you the practice to open the heart to that experience, and the practice to have that experience. So, in one sense, this course, it's going to go right to the top. It's going to be very, very basic philosophical ideas, and it's going to be like cooking, a sugar cane. It's going to get thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker until the last class, on the last 3 verses, it's the highest subject, which we'll explain in a relevant way. So, but it's really somehow or other for people who are beginning, how do we practice this? Because there's different stages of faith. Faith is called Shraddha. But it's not like it's I believe or I don't believe. It's this stirring in the heart of devotion. And it begins with just this experience somehow. Anybody like to share how they first met devotees? I know Bryn went to the Bhakti Fest and then met one of my students, and she thought of going to India, and then she wound up in India, and it was such a nice experience there. And there's some people, they may want to, one of Raghunath's classes or something, and something. I know one this old Jewish man. I can't tell this story enough. And I don't know why he went to India. It had a lot to do with something with his Jewish mother making him feel guilty. I don't know. I spoke to him later, but he went to India. And somehow he wound up in Vrindavan. And he came before the forms of Radha Shyam Sundar in our temple in Vrindavan. You can't imagine. On festival days, they spend $6,000 on flowers. And you can't, even in the water, they put strings. They fill up the courtyard with water, and they put strings. And in the water, they have these elaborate designs of flowers on everything, just flowers. So he came in and he saw the deities and he began to cry. Somehow or other, from his experience in life, at that moment, somehow this older Jewish man, somehow or other going to India, in whatever frustration he had, and his heart opened up and he had an experience. And that's the most fortunate thing in the world, because the most fortunate thing in the world is at least to have the right objective. Objective means what will give you happiness. If you have the wrong objective, you waste your whole life. You finally wind up there and you're the rich businessman or the movie star who finally achieved your objective, but there's no love in your heart. And there's actually less love in your heart because what that kind of experience does to you. And then what? So the right objective, and this is the right, and this text assumes that you have, even if you don't, the text is speaking to someone who has this experience. And even if you don't have this experience, it's going to speak to you of what a spiritual path is when you have that experience. In terms of the class, sometimes I take a break. I'm going to try this year just to go directly without stopping. If someone has to go to the bathroom, then just walk out and look at the clock, and you'll get the timing on the video, and you'll look at the few minutes that you missed. But I may change that also, and it depends. 3 hours I thought was too much. It's kind of like, you can have an Italian feast, right? You can sit for 2 hours, but 4 hours, it's like it's too much. And especially since it's a bit philosophical. And I will have at the end, I like to have the practical aspect also, that what we did before, that we write our realizations and we discuss it and like that. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to really study the text so deeply that I can form it in any amount of time. So, and now let's put up the objectives of the class. I just thought, what I'm not going to do is, and it's not a criticism, but it also is a criticism, teacher training. In ISKCON we have Bhakti Shastri, and what you do, you have to complete a certain amount. And the objective is completing a certain amount. I won't study the text this way. I won't go over every single analogy, every example, every verse that's given. Because I want to go in depth and I want to explain the core principles of the text. And I want to have people time to engage in the text personally and reflect on it in relationship to their own life. So that's kind of my objective, and we'll do it that way. Okay. Any questions? I'm trying to teach it in a way that I just don't have to rush through it, and that there's always also time for questions, if you have. But if there are none, that's also fine. Mangalarti, yes.
Just quick, I wanted to ask if you could just repeat this sentence that was so deep for me. You said that everything that happens to us is to open our hearts to God. Is that what you said?
Yeah, the objective is that somehow or other that you're open for this experience. of God. And to the degree that you are open for that experience is to the degree that you'll have that experience. Therefore, they say if someone takes the prasadam of God, right? They take the foodstuff that's offered to God. There's the stories of Narada Muni that all his sinful activities were destroyed. There's the example of a person who heard the Bhagavatam once, and he just gave up everything and came to Vrindavan. You know, there's people who chanted the holy name once. So why does that happen to some people, not others? Because people are open to the experience and validate that experience. If you don't agree with the message, come on in, welcome. Okay, good. Have a seat someplace? Okay, wonderful. Good. Okay. Okay. So, you know, to be open to that experience. And that's also what faith is, that I validate it, I want it, I believe in it. And then when you have that, you get the full experience of the object and act of devotion that you're coming in contact with. So that's what I mean. This is kind of because I'm studying Mangalati, what is faith? You know, and it's really the soul. It's that feeling in the soul of love that's just naturally within the soul. Okay, Rati, now we're going to talk a little bit about the author. This is one of the verses that we always glorify him, is this Rūpa Gosvāmī. What an amazing fellow he was. He was India was like countries. He was like home minister of a country. And somehow or other, his name was Dabir Khas, because to work for the Muslims, there was some kind of even conversion. You had to be. But he was such an exceptional person. And he was actually what's called a Kavi Raj. In Sanskrit, Raj means king and Kavi means poet. It's a very special thing. And in the text they say maybe in 100 years, maybe many great authors, but a Kavi Raj, you know, a master of wordcraft, maybe there'll be 2 in a century. And I wish, and I'll bring it in one day, he did this exercise of poetry. We have 11 exercises that are just mind-blowing. Like one of the exercises, you have to write a poem of where he does it of Krishna, where it reads the same backwards and forwards. And then it reads like this the same way. And then in a circle, his name is signed also, Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī. I mean, the ability they have, or to write a poem about Krishna with one consonant. You know, it's his master. So somehow or other, it wasn't just his material qualification. Somehow or other, he had this deep humility. And I was talking about this concept of why do you get sadhu sangha? When are you ready for sadhu sangha? It's kind of when you come in the point in your life that you really accept, not only accept, but want to be guided. Now I'm going to say the word with all its negative connotations and then give a purport. When you want authority. Not someone sitting on your head, but someone who actually is an authority. Basically, it means I want to be guided by truth. I want to live my life being guided by truth. I will surrender to truth. I want that. That's called humility, by the way. I want to surrender to truth. And sometimes, when you have a very high position, you're very reluctant to do that. Why is it difficult to surrender to truth? To be under authority, actually. Why, Brad? It conflicts with your desires. Right. And so therefore we generally don't want that. Not only don't we want that, we generally envy the people who have that over us. There's even one verse in the Bhagavatam that says, Acharya mam vijanayam navamanyeta kar. You should accept the Acharya. That means the guru, the teacher. Krishna says, it's my very self. And in that verse, it doesn't even mean the spiritual master. It means the father who actually has that position. It means your teacher. It means the head of a government. I'll say it now. Sometimes my humor will come into the class. In an ideal world, okay? And you want that. And a humble person will want that. And there'll be such a resistance to that. Because really, if you really look deep into your psyche, we all have to admit it. We all have to admit it that, thank you. We all have to admit it that we want power. What do we mean we want power? Well, everything is advertising. The whole world is advertising out there. Get power. What is power? Power is knowledge, beauty, class, wealth. What?
I said wealth.
Wealth, yeah. All these things. Yeah. And what is advertising? Get this. Oh, you'll be beautiful. Why? Because if I'm beautiful, then I have more, I can control more the world around me. Get wealth. Why? Have that car. Why? So we're struggling with that. And the deeper and deeper and deeper we go, we won't care about power. We'll want truth. We'll want truth. And so he really wanted that truth. And he was just so humble. Because he was the chief minister, and then he came into the assembly of devotees, and he was a new man. You know, there's one sannyasi that may come here. He's 80 years old. He just took sannyas from Radhanath Swami. His name is Amala Bhakta. And you were listening to the audios, Meena. He does a lot of those audios. Where Dharma Mitra studied yoga, he was studying yoga with the same person at that time. And when that person left, this person was going to be the next guru. You can imagine, with Dharma, he was going to be the next guru. But somehow or other, he got enthused in bhakti, in devotion. And he came to Krishna consciousness, and he joined the Bhakta program, the new devotees. Can you imagine the humility in that person? The qualification in that person? That he wanted truth, not power. And if he saw truth was in another place, he came into that. He's a very humble person. Very humble person. And so Rupa Goswami, he just came, and he was just so humble. He would want to sit, and by that humility, now, I'm not even getting to the text, the introduction. I have everything in my mind where I'm going. You know, in one sense, I said, I want to have enough so I can finish the class. Then halfway through, I'll say, well, I don't have enough time now. But I think these points are interesting. A person that I like to listen to, my friend Bhurijan Prabhu, he made a point about bhakti. We should act in such a way that the heart of a Vaishnava or a great teacher should melt. Because then everything will come out. The inner secrets of the heart will come out. And he got the inner secrets. Because if you know, and I can see, I can give you the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness, but there's a really deep point about Krishna consciousness and the nature of God and our loving relationship with God. And somehow or other, he was the one in which it was given. And therefore he's glorified like that. Rati will read the next thing. Before the creation of this cosmic manifestation, the Lord enlightened the heart of Lord Brahma with the details of creation and manifested the Vedic knowledge. In exactly the same way, the Lord, being anxious to revive the Vrindavan pastimes of Lord Krishna, impregnated the heart of Rupa Gosvāmī with spiritual potency. By this potency, Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī could revive the activities of Krishna in Vrindavan, activities almost lost to memory. In this way, he spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. So a very special person, very, very special book, where he actually, out of compassion. Bryn, you remember we went to Ter Kadamba that first time? That was the place where he wrote the book.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is wow. It was pretty special.
I love that place.
What? It was a special place. You remember that? What was the name the sadhu gave you?
Anuradha.
Okay. The secret things are coming out now, right? Okay. Okay, now the book. I'll tell you a little bit about the book. Okay, just checking. Is it too warm in here? Is everyone comfortable? Is it, what?
It's very stuffy.
It's stuffy, huh? Okay, open a little bit of a window. Okay? Yeah, I don't want to fight this stuff yet, but well, I know her. She's like the polar bear club, so we're not going to...
No, I'm always cold.
Really?
It's stuffy.
Okay. 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 Is that going to be okay? If you get a little chilly, you can move. Okay. The other side? Okay. It seems like we needed a little air. Except for Janine.
Don't go by me.
We're not going to go by you, Janine. Because if we go by you, we'd blast the heater in the room. Okay. Oh, no, keep it open a little. Let it fly.
That's good?
I want the air. You closed it up. We want air.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of air right now.
What?
You're getting a lot of air right now.
It is? Okay, I'm sorry, Gail.
I'm with Janine, okay?
Okay. I may have to break it up halfway to give a break, but we'll see. You're all with me so far?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. So, what is the Upadeśāmṛta? It's a summary of Krishna consciousness. And it's done in, and a summary of Krishna, yeah, it's getting cold in here too, great. Okay. Well, we can't satisfy everyone. You know, it says that a king, one who's ruler of the kingdom, he has to be a Mahabhagavat. That means the topmost devotee. And why does he have to be the topmost devotee? Because he has to satisfy everyone. And people have different desires. I won't be able to do it in the class, but I'll try. Okay, it's the summary of the Vedas. If you know, it comes down. It's God manifests the Vedas, and then Vyas, who's the editor of the Vedas, he communicates it in different ways. Finally, he decides that the best communication of the Vedas is the Bhagavatam, And then there are books that actually explain the philosophy of the Bhagavatam. And one is the Upadeśāmṛta. And it's a very unique book because in 11 verses, it goes from the very beginning to the very highest thing, which is the next verse. This is from the commentary by Prabhupada. The conclusion is that to live on the banks of Radha Kund and bathe there daily constitutes the highest perfection of devotional service. You agree, Janine? Yes, you've done that. Okay. So here's the question, right? If you're serious about Krishna consciousness, why even read the other 10 verses? Anyone want to say, why even read the other 10 verses? Bryn?
I'm cheating because I heard you say this before. But
Actually, Bryn was studying this book with me in Vrindavan, but okay, we can make you look good.
Because you might take it cheaply. You might dive bomb into Radha.
Well, you have to be careful when they say that simple instructions are the highest things, because there may be something much, much more deeply. It's not just a physical activity, it's a matter of consciousness. It's the same thing I explained with chanting the holy name. There's how many people know Professor Bryant? Some of you know, right? You studied with him? So I would stay at his house. You know him, Carla, too, right? He comes there. Yeah, so I stayed at his house in Princeton. And, you know, he had this teacher who was like really, really learned. He passed away in his 90s. And he had the equivalent of like 9 PhDs in like but Shastra. He was the most learned person. And, but he was very conservative about certain things. Some of his disciple, what about going to Radha Kund? He said, well, if you like a picnic, you know. And what he was trying to say is that it's not just activity, it's consciousness. And this is a very, very deep thing. And when I'm bringing this up is because the concept is that you want to do this, you got to start with the first verse. And the first verse says, Rati, you can skip to the first verse. Vacha vegam manasakroda vegam. Chant. Vacha vegam manasakroda jiva vegam udarapasta vegam. Jiva vegam udarapasta vegam. Etan vegan yo vishaheta dhira. Sarvam api mam pritivim sashishyat. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. By the way, isn't it just what he did is he presented the yamas of Krishna consciousness in poetry. I mean, it's such a beautiful verse. Vacha vegam manasakroda vegam. Jiva vegam udarapasta vegam. Etan vegan yo vishaheta dhira. Sarvam api mam prativam sashishyat. So, what this verse is saying at the beginning, and it's interesting, You do these things, you study this, you can become qualified. The problem is the way we project it. It's like, oh, you can become qualified, you can become a guru and have many followers and a lot of power. That's not what it means. What it means is, you become qualified person spiritually. You become qualified to actually understand something in such a deep way that you can actually transmit it to others. In the Bhagavatam class on Sunday, Kaustubha made a very, 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 very interesting point that I liked. Someone asked him, and it's kind of interesting, it said, how we take terms and we misunderstand them according to the application of them, and they become misunderstood. So someone asked him, can women take sannyas? So, and the answer is no. Sannyas is a renunciate. The answer is no. So then the issue would become, wait a second, this is gender inequality. This is wrong. So Kaustubha explained it in a real way. The reason why we misunderstand that as gender inequality is because the concept of renunciate is the one who's on the top of the organization with all the power. So if that's the case, then it should be equal to everyone. But in the classic conception of sannyas, it would be arduous austerities where someone would, have to walk in the forest, alone, experiencing all God's creation. And then the question would be, would you want your mother to do that? Then it's in another perspective. Then maybe it's, the women would have another way of being renounced rather than to walk in the forest alone. So I'm saying the same thing, become guru. Wow, what is this, a material reward? You do these things, you can be in charge. I always make the joke, but it's true, that my parents were imposed to Krishna consciousness until I had a position. And then I thought, they don't care what religion I join as long as I'm in charge. But it's not like that. The concept is you can become the best servant. What actually guru means, not the Lord and Master, it means he's the servant. He's the one that's actually surrendered and following truth. So it's saying you can become qualified in this way. Now, go back another verse, Rati. I appreciate that. And this is by the guru of Prabhupada's guru. No, go backwards. Yeah. And he just made a kind of a summary of the basic core subjects, the symptoms of self-controlled devotee. Is it good to be self-controlled? Do you respect people that have that? Or do you like people that are just impulsive? So this is a spiritual quality that you're, and in bhakti, it goes along, it means like a strong mind. And what a strong mind is both, in bhakti it's different than the path of gyan. In bhakti, a strong mind means both the ability to control and express emotions. When you actually have a strong mind, you can be disciplined, but you can also not be inhibited to open your heart to God and to others. And we'll learn this when we read more and more about bhakti. But symptoms of a self-controlled, and then 2 to 4, one's external symptoms and devotional practices. What does they avoid? What do they do? How do they exchange? And then one's internal development. So you can see, and then the hierarchy of elevation. So it covers the whole gamut of bhakti in a very beautiful way. Okay, we'll go to the next verse. Now, at the beginning of Srila Prabhupada's purport on this last, his commentary, Prabhupada called it purports, he discusses the concept of prayaschitya, or atonement. And atonement means you can counter something you do wrong by something else you do. You know, you kill someone, then you can, do this. You do this, you can do this. You can fast. Okay, good. Eva, you can be the temperature control. You can be the temperature control, okay? Very good. So Prabhupada, he doesn't go into vacho vegam, manasa, controlling the speech, controlling the mind. He talks about atonement, and as you'll read in the purport or the commentary, he talks against it. And why does he talk against atonement? And he gives different examples of what he doesn't like. For example, go to the next verse, Rati. This is a famous verse. It's about an elephant. There's great analogies in the book too. It's about an elephant, and the elephant goes in the water, and then after the elephant bathes, he throws sand on himself. So it's kind of like, what is the use? And then Prabhupada talks about confession. You know, you go into the priest, and I did this, I did this, I did this, and then you go out and do the same thing. And there's several analogies that are given there. Or hygiene. You're sick, you stuff yourself with pills, right? And then you go and eat the same thing that causes the disease. What is the use of this kind of purification? So that's what Prabhupada, you'll read in the purport, he talks extensively about it. And I think one of the reasons that Prabhupada may talk about it is he's coming to the West, and his main mission is to distribute literature and give people good ideas. And I think he understands that the Christians have this concept, and it's a Christian country. But he's saying, no, if you want to be purified, you have to undergo a standard process of purification. And that's what this verse is going to be discussing. That how do you actually become purified of your impulses and your urges? And it's going to be discussed in a very, very practical way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save time at the end, where I'm going to really sum up what I think the Krishna conscious way is. I'm going to discuss it when I discuss each item, but the Krishna conscious way of becoming controlled. And it's not easy. We have deep, deep impressions. At the same sense that somehow or other, God has chosen you to get that sadhu sangha. It has, and he somehow decided that your material life can be finished. At the same sense that he decided that somehow he chose people who grew up in a culture where samskaras, impressions, clusters of desires were constantly being reinforced. And I at least grew up without internet for, till I was 45 or something, But now, so how do you get rid of these impulses? How do you control these impulses? And in the path of bhakti, it's going to be very, very practically described. And I'm going to discuss that and then sum it up. But this is a verse that discusses this in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, where someone was discussing how can we be free from all these impulses, and the Guru was rejecting the path of atonement or prayaschitya. You know, you just try to counter them without purifying your heart. And it's not going to work. Okay, Rati, we're going to skip on now to the first verse, and then we're going to go back to these, which is Vacha Vegam. Okay, listen. Vacha Vegam. Whoa. How much trouble do we get in by the things we say that we don't? Did that ever happen to you, Kadamba?
On a regular basis.
Vacha Vegam.
There's no hope for me, George. I just can't get past the first one.
Kadamba, by the mercy of the Guru, anything is possible. So let me read. Just listen to this. And again, Bhakti Raksha Sridhar Maharaj, he says, one is habituated to speak too much. The tendencies to speak is always there, whether it is good or bad. There is no time to discriminate, always talking and talking. I may speak everything and anything and later repent. Why should I say like this? I should have not said such a thing, only to pain the heart of others. When the force comes within to say something, we cannot control it. We must try to control that force coming from within in the form of speech. All problems start there. Because what happens is, and this is especially important in terms of a bhakti tradition, the worst thing for the love and devotion in your heart is to talk bad about others. And what happens is, when you can't control the speech and you talk frivolously, it will inevitably come to that point. There's even verses that say it. As soon as it's idle talk, and it destroys bhakti more than anything else. I wrote from the A.C.'s commentary on the Yoga Sutras. It says, the yama is satyam, to tell the truth. And he says, defines truth as one's words and thoughts being in exact correspondence to the facts. It's called integrity. Integral literally means to become one with. So when your words become one with the fact, and honesty means when your words are when your life is one with your ideals. So here it is. So speech, the transference of knowledge to others, it should not be deceitful, misleading, devoid of value. It should be beneficial and not harmful. Manu says, let him not speak what is true, but unkind. Let him speak kind, not untrue. I'll just tell you control of the speech and how difficult it is, and I'll tell you a personal story. Every year, I spend at least 1 month in this holy place, a Govardhan Hill. And I have a little kutir, a little house with cow dung walls. And it's really simple, and it's like my joy, because right now I am working out, as we say in English. Up at 12:30 this morning, studied for 2 hours, chanted for 3 hours, then one class, one thing after another. Yesterday I had a class in Colombia, I had a class in New Zealand, I had an hour and a half phone call to Iran, to something doing there. I am working, but during Kartik, it's for me. And I get in that room, and then for 1 month, it's just me and the holy name. And Niyama Seva, boring life. In spiritual life, you want boring life. Same thing every day. Exactly. I wake up at this time, I chant at this time, I eat at this time, I go around Govardhan Hill at this time, I come back, same thing, boring life.
Perfect balance.
What?
Perfect balance.
Perfect balance, yeah, thank you. So what happens is that the last 5 days is called Bhishma Panchaka because Bhishma was this big warrior. So a lot of times people fast for the month. They do fasting. There's generally some restriction in eating, and some people get very strict. But Bhishma couldn't do that. So he got a special benediction because he was such a powerful, he was called Vrikadar, wolf belly, voracious eater. He was so powerful, Bhima Panchaka, Bhishma, anyway, whatever it is. The point is, the last 5 days you take special vows. So some people take this vow where on the first day they eat cow dung, the second day they take cow urine. You know, it's like, you can't believe it. They just do this whole arduous austerities, and again, then they fast, and and so everybody's into that mind. We're gonna chant extra rounds. So everybody has all these kind of ideas. So I went to one friend. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "For the last 5 days, I'm not going to criticize anyone." I went, "That's good. I will also not criticize anyone. I will take that vow." And he says, "And if I do criticize someone, this is what Indians do. If they say something they shouldn't have said, they grab their ears and bite their tongue and go like this." So we're going to do this if we ever criticize. And once you make that vow to stop criticizing people, you find out how much you do. It's shocking. In fact, I got the bands here for the class.
I'm doing mine again.
Okay, we're gonna do that exercise. I'll explain it to you also. But so controlling the speech and degrading speech is against God and against people, and for material things. It should be very thoughtful, our speech. It should be sweet. It should be beneficial. It should not be harmful. So wonderful when someone actually, just speaks. But what do you do when you have all these impulses? So what it recommends is not silence, but that you learn to speak meaningful things. And in the Bhakti tradition, about Krishna. Like, Lucy, you were telling me that with your husband, he can't get away to come here. He's working hard, maintain the family. But in the evening, right, he says, "Tell me something about Krishna," right? So just the habit of elevating your talk. And actually you can get a tremendous taste for it too. To elevate, and this is it. In other words, artificially things can't be restricted. They actually have to be used. So you have to get used to talking about meaningful things. Things that it can actually elevate people. You have to get used to actually sharing things. You have to get used to actually having something to share. And honestly speaking, I have a lot of urge to speak. I'm not one of those quiet, silent persons. It's just not my nature. I'm from Brooklyn. It's just not my nature. And Satya Hari, you're from where?
Queens.
Queens, okay. We can talk all day together. So what happens is my life now, there's just so much opportunity for meaningful talk. So really, when you actually start to gear your life by engaging in sacred texts and wanting to share things of real meaning, realizations, and getting into that habit, then it helps to actually control the tongue. I'm going to give an overall recommendation for everything at the end, but we're going to do that. Now, the mind, the urges of the mind. Wow. Prabhupada said the recklessness or fickleness of the mind is controlled when one can fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, the Nectar Instruction, Text 1, purport. It's difficult to control the mind, isn't it? And the thing is, too, is just the way we grew up is I gave a class at Columbia University to graduate students in psychology. And by the grace of Prabhupada, they were on the edge of their seats. They were asking me about child rearing. Like a sannyasi, I've never married. And I'm there, I'm explaining to them about child rearing. And they were listening. And they were like experts in the field. But I was explaining to them about child rearing. And I explained how the mind works, and it's all from the Yoga Sutras and different experience, but how a mind gets ruined is when you grow up in an environment that's not fixed by tradition and culture and by authority of respectable elders. In other words, you're born into a world that's already fixed, and it's not negotiated by, your mother or father's emotional moods or by your power of persuasion, I want. And therefore, your world is never set, and every day it's a different thing. It creates an uncontrolled mind. And then when people grow older, they have anxiety problems because they didn't have that stability. And an interesting thing, I have a friend, he was here for the Roots of Kirtan festival he had, and he was the younger brother of my godbrother, Srila Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who's the guru of Kastuba. And he was probably the main disciple of Prabhupada to manage the Hare Krishna movement. His intelligence was so his younger brother, by about 10 years maybe, his younger brother is an English professor. And he could have got a position in New York, but he chose to get a position in Iowa to raise a family. And him and his wife are very good parents. They're so soft-hearted, but at the same sense, they set boundaries. And I found that out because they got sabbatical and they came to Vrindavan and they said to me, come to the MVT. We want to treat you for lunch. That's the restaurant there for those of you that don't know. So I'm there, and they had a little daughter, 6 years old, and we're finishing the meal, and she says, Maharaj, will you like ice cream? I said, yeah. This is about 10, 15 years ago. I said, yeah, okay. And the father started to laugh. I said, why? He said, this is Wednesday. She knows in our family, they only have ice cream on Sunday. And then he was telling me, they were such a loving family, they set boundaries. So the child's not growing up in a negotiable world. I'm just saying, whatever the case is, we've developed so many patterns, in the mind. So many patterns in the mind that overtake us, manipulate us. It's, okay, you want some humor now? About how patterns of minds work irrationally? Would you like some humor? Lighten up the day? Okay, yeah, okay. So, my mother lives in New Jersey. Some of you know she's 95 years old. So, maybe when I'm here now, once a month, I'll go and I'll stay for a couple of days. But I still have things to do, and I have a little car. So I drove out one day. She went to Atlantic City, and I drove out to the things that I do. So I came back, and I was driving back on Garden State Parkway. I said, it's 8 o'clock, let me call my mother. So I called my mother, and I said, Mom, I'll be back in 15 minutes. And she says, oh my God, I thought you were dead. I said, why? She said, when I saw that your car wasn't there, but your clothes were still in the room, I searched every room for a dead body. So I said, was there any other conclusion you could have come from the evidence at hand? But, so, okay, I kind of felt that we needed a good joke. But the fact is, that we can laugh at, but our negative patterns, our mind patterns, the irrationality by which we come to conclusions because the mind is uncontrolled, because of the environment we come in where it has been overstimulated. I ran a school in India, and at one time, we brought these scholarship people from Nepal. And, they live in the mountains, and to see your friend, you walk 10 minutes or you walk an hour, and the peacefulness of mind that was there. So controlling the mind and really in spiritual life, the best way to control the mind is to have responsibility, especially in spiritual responsibility too. But your responsibility is your duty, but spiritual responsibilities, and especially some mission you're connected to actually do good. And in this tradition, it means to give the holy name, to organize kirtans, to do things that elevate people. And it really helps to control the mind. And especially, honestly, when you share and you talk in a decent way and you share spiritual teachings or good, because when you speak, you have to be conscious. You have to be thoughtful. And engaging in the service of Krishna and his devotees. I see Michael. He's supposed to be here, but he's working so hard he didn't make it today. He's supposed to come from 3 to 4:30. But I know when he first came, his mind was so active. You know, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? He's so busy in service. He's so much responsibility. His mind becomes peaceful. So really, we should have a mission. We should have a mission to do good for the world. And the best good is spiritual mission. And, and this mission is to transform people's consciousness and have responsibility in that. It's really the best way to control the mind. And to develop a taste for higher thoughts. Srila Prabhupada said, if you read Krishna book every night, you'll be happy. The pastimes of Krishna, attractive. Prabhupada said there's a mental culture of Krishna consciousness. He said when you take food, as a bhakta, when you take food, you can actually think of Krishna taking prasadam with the cowherd boys. He even said when little children eat, they can eat like cows, if they want. There's Kishore, am I ruining your family now? Is that okay? Now take a look how nicely these children sit. Very nice. They're sitting for the whole class and they're listening. That's so nice, right? And one thing the mother did, which was very, very nice, is she has an Ayurvedic doctor, and and the father, they only eat pure food. They only eat pure food. So even the food we're eating, the water we're eating, everything is so disturbing. But this is the way in this, and Prabhupada did that because he had this mission, and who was joining the mission at the beginning of the mission? Hippies. That means drugs, sex life. The minds were all over the place. He engaged them in a mission so that they had to worry about responsibilities rather than petty things. There's so many things in that regard. Krodha, Vega, the impulse of anger. And that is so devastating. Anger creates disaster, and then we get reaction for it. And we have to check that flow. But I think in bhakti what it realizes, and this is the difference between bhakti and gyan. Bhakti is the path of vairagya. You have to cut off all emotions and all thoughts. In bhakti, somehow you have to have a way to actually utilize them. I have one story how I used anger. You want to hear the story?
Yes.
Because, of course, in the Shastras they give example. Hanuman was angry. He set fire to Lanka. But he's worshipped as the greatest devotee. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got really angry when Chagai and Madhai, these drunken Brahmins, attacked Lord Nityananda, his devotee. So anger can be used. It's very hard to completely repress it. I'll give you an example how someone helped me in that way, use it in a psychological way. At a particular time, a friend of mine knew that in the context of where I was feeling a little oppression from certain people. And when you're connected with an institution, you're stuck with it. And at the same time, if you value the unit that you're in, whether it's the partnership or the family or the community or the institution, you certain things you have to tolerate for the higher sense of an organization or things that you have trust in. So it can get pretty bad. I don't know what word to use. So he knew that I had reason to be angry at someone. And sometimes karmically in your life, God just sends one person to purify you. And you don't know why, but it's... I was on the phone, I was talking to these people in this one place, and just one person was just had it in for another person. And because it was a country where Krishna consciousness was a little bit, not legal, you really can't deal with it. But I'm just saying, sometimes that happens. So my friend knew that so he did something very psychological with me and philosophical. He said, I want you to think of that person. So I closed my eyes. And he said, I want you to picture his face. And I saw his face. He said, now I want you to let him have it. Everything. And I was going, it's a cartoon what was coming out of my mouth, but good, like this. I was just like really, like the anger was just coming out. And then he said, put your own face there. Put your own face there. That's the law of karma. But the basic point is, emotions are hard to transcend. They have to be worked through. And another example, is I was in front of our temple about 20 years ago, and this very obnoxious hippie girl came. And she was walking in the temple with her shoes. Now, we don't do that in a proper culture. And the reason why we don't do that in a proper culture is because the feet touch everything that's dirty, so you don't bring them into a sacred place. In some temples, they don't do it in North India because it's so cold, but in South India, before you enter the temples, you have to wash your feet. So she's walking with shoes, and I said, excuse me, the shoe rack's there, you can put it. And as they say in Brooklyn, maybe if you need a translator, we can, she started to give me lip. And she just started to go on and on and on, and I was nice, and she was so I was like an authority for telling you to put the shoes in the rack. That was a big issue for you. And my anger was coming. And then I kind of looked at it, and I said, all right, I'll use it. And it worked. And so what does anger really mean? Anger means we want to remove something that's disturbing the environment. That's what anger means. So what you have to do is use your anger to remove things that are imposing and oppressing the environment. And then that's the proper use of anger. And in a devotional sense, it's really, people who are, overly disrespectful to your heart and your conceptions and your faith. And it has a use, and even a little moral outrage is okay. So it has a use or utility. The demands of the tongue. This is the tongue. The demands of the tongue. This means more or less like tasting, that we have such an urge for what is tasteful, and we become a servant to that, a slave to what is tasty rather than what is healthy. whether it's detrimental to my health, and Prabhupada writes in Nectar of Devotion, I shall not fall prey to my tongue and become its slave. And so of course, one way it's controlled is that the tongue is you try to use the tongue in love. And that means honoring prasadam. In a Krishna conscious conception, the vision is that everything, that God's the supreme enjoyer, we're part of God, we're meant for His service. So the kitchen is for God, because you don't eat anything that's not offered first to God in love and devotion. And it really controls the tongue, because you just can't eat, because if you're going to eat something, you got to offer it. You have, and again, I'm going back to my upbringing. In my upbringing, I didn't have the level of concern for my health that Mother Kishori has for her children there. And in our culture, you weren't considered a good mother unless you had a huge place for cookies that your child can take whenever they want. I loved Fig Newtons, Hostess Twinkies, Oreo cookies, Chips Ahoy, and literally eating all the time. I'm lucky I'm still alive, actually, with what you put in the body, and the kind of, I trust you. And the kind of so it's the concept of honoring prasadam. And I'll give you an example. In Krishna consciousness, you don't deny the senses. You change the consciousness in which they are used. We have sensuous experiences in Krishna consciousness. They're allowed, but they're connected with love. And I'll give you an example of that. Like a mother who cooks for the child, she'll cook and she'll want to please the children. And then when she eats, she will taste how her children enjoyed. So she'll get an emotional satisfaction from the food as well as the taste. And when there's an emotional satisfaction, then you need to have less of a sensuous satisfaction. I'll give you another example. In Vrindavan, at one time, with everything else I was doing, I was in charge of all the kitchens. And I wasn't a cook, but I kind of have a sense of organizing things. And my expertise was menus. People would consult me on menus of how to balance it and the right thing. So what happened at a particular time, after Prabhupada left, there was great challenges in the Krishna consciousness movement. And at a particular time in the Hare Krishna movement, everyone was in the temple. Whether you had 4 kids or everything was in the temple. It was like complete kind of a communistic type thing. And therefore, no one had money to go to Vrindavan. They only came once a year together on Gaur Purnima every few years. But then, when after a great teacher goes, it's predicted in the Shastra, if he's really a powerful person, it's not going to be the same without him. Think sports. When that great sports person leaves the team, right? It's not the same. Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls, things like that. He's so great, they're not going to be the same without him. So when Prabhupada left, there was a lot of turmoil. and people started coming during Kartik for the first time. And so we had Prabhupada's Govardhan Puja, which is the Mountain of Food Festival, and Prabhupada's disappearance within 3 or 4 days. And I was in charge of a gourmet feast for like 1,200 people. And I collected like all-star cooks, really. I mean, the best cooks in the world I collected. And we had no facility. There was still coal stoves. There was no place to actually even take the prasadam. Where do you fit 1,200 people? There was no, in the temple, the roofs. It was just really, but I put my mind on it, and I practical, and I plan how to do this impossible task, what's cooked the day before, and somehow or other, I'm running around from one kitchen to another, and at the end, it has to be served properly, and it was really gourmet preparations, the best things you can have. You ever have sweet rice with roasted lotus seeds? No, okay. And cashews? The things were amazing. And at the end of the feast, I would sit down with the cook, and we would eat. But we didn't have to eat a lot. Why? Because we were tasting how the devotees were enjoying. So the concept of putting love into the food, offering it and honoring it. When Srila Bhakti-Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's guru, when someone was holding the Jagannath Prasad, he would pay obeisances and circumambulate the person. You honor the food. That's it. Then the urges of the belly, that means, that's different from the tongue. The belly means, we just want to fill it. Fill it. It's not just taste, it's got to be fill. And, it seems to be vacant, and we want more. And, but we should only take the food. I think, what is it? It's half food, half water, half air, etc., like that. And just the fact of eating at regular times in that kind of culture, when nice food is cooked in that type of culture, in the modern day, right? People just snack and eat. No one cooks anymore. Food was a loving experience. When there were 2 people, one of the people would be serving, even if there were 2 people. So you have the loving experience, the emotional experience, and therefore the tendency. And then Upadeśāmṛta, urge of the genitals. It's described also, controlling, they're in a straight line. It's the tongue, the belly, the genitals. When you control the tongue, you control other things. And you can see when things are not controlled, so much disaster, so many lives are spoiled, and we have to be so careful in the dealings. Here it says, elevating when used to beget Krishna-conscious children. I think I'll speak about that a little bit. That's a yogic standard, actually. Sex life within marriage is not sinful. It's just not the yogic standard. And when Prabhupada was in the Gaudiya Math, when he was in his organization, the married people weren't very respected because of sex life, and it was expected within partnership their sex life, and it's not sinful, and it's how one controls those urges in a committed relationship. But I'm saying, because when we grew up, this Prabhupada was setting this standard. And somehow I think like he just wanted married people more respected. So he set a real high standard. And it's a yogic standard. And at the beginning days, people lived in the ashrams, everyone. So this was the yogic standard. But anyway, that's our standard, but it seems that it's difficult for most people to follow. So I'll just say something else, that in Krishna consciousness, the reason people get married is to advance in spiritual life. It's a partnership to move forward in spiritual life, to take responsibility and not just act by your urges. So there's a committed relationship. And so it's part of the path. So within committed relationships, there are affectionate dealings. And they're connected to Krishna consciousness. They're not supposed to be repressed. Same thing, you have a family, you have children. It's not, oh, I have these urges, I have affection, I love my daughter, I love my son. No, they're within Krishna consciousness. So, but somehow or other, unrestricted sex life, it puts one in the bodily concept of life. Probably more than anything else, because there's the soul and the body. What is the conjunction? The conjunction is to enjoy, and when enjoyment and indulgence is without restriction, the identification becomes stronger, and therefore the suffering in life becomes stronger, because whatever pleasure you get on the material platform. There's a statement, a pinch of, what is it? A pinch of pain is felt more than a ton of pleasure. So in one sense, for pleasure, you absorb yourself in the bodily concept of life, but it increases the suffering much more. And therefore, there has to be regulation of our urges and impulses, at least within a committed relationship. Because, the way the system works is that when impulses are regulated, two things happen. One, they're satisfied so that you don't always think of them. And at the same time, regulation means that you're controlling them. So you're performing some austerity that reduces those desires. And yoga means celibacy. Yoga means to control the impulses. So you move towards that, just like there's brahmacharis, they're monks. Prabhupada said there are two types of monks. There's the attached and detached. And the ones that are attached, they get married, which means 99%. And they get married. And why do they get married? To fulfill their attachments, to become detached. Everything's the path of detachment in bhakti. But kamesya nendriya pritir labo jiveta yavata. How do we, what are the senses? We don't live to enjoy, we enjoy to live. We don't live to eat, we eat to live. So within Krishna consciousness, we take what we need. But jivasya tattva jigyasa, we take what we need for a purpose and an objective, which is, the objective is Krishna consciousness, spiritual life. So we take what we need. Now, Rati, go back. I'm going to finish up in time. I'm going to say just a few more things. Go back to that. I'm just going to give a conclusion here. We'll have time for questions. And I'm pretty proud of myself that I completed everything in the right amount of time. But I prepared. That's why I'm up so early. And as Pasquale, the famous writer, said, he said, I'm sorry the letter was so long. Bryn, you heard everything, almost as much as, not as much as Gail, but you're coming close. But I'm sorry the letter was so long, but I didn't have enough time to write it. So I'm preparing these, but Rati, it's, go back go back in, okay, 5, 6, okay, 7, and 4. Okay, it says, the one that says how to control urges, right? Sadhu Sangha and thoughtfulness, right? You have that now? That's up there? Okay. I'm just going to give just a quick thing. Sadhu Sangha. This is bhakti. It's the association of saintly people. Okay, these are the two ways. Go to the next one. This is just from a book, Prem Bhakti Chandrika. I just want to explain this. Sadhu Sangha, what it means is, and there's a great analogy that one saint gave. He said our energy is like income, right? We have to spend energy, right? So what happens is, when you come in contact with a spiritual path and you have intimate association of saintly people and you become inspired in spiritual life and a mission of self-purification and a mission of sharing that, then that's where your income is spent. And the rest you would spend to enjoy to live. You switch. It's no longer you live to enjoy, you enjoy to live. You know, you spend the right amount on it. So here's the quote. It says, "What harm can lust and greed do to a seeker of the truth who is on the path of divine realization if he can have the intimate association of a sadhu?" In other words, they cannot do anything because something is being spent, but it is side income. If help is coming from higher, then that supersedes the expenditure of the lower, and the lower thing cannot do any harm. So are you spending for the higher thing? Is your energy going for the higher thing, the higher mission, the higher things? Then there's not that much for the lower things. So this is really the thing. And I told you I'm 65 now, and I've coined a new phrase that 65 is the new 50. And the reason why I say 65 is the new 50 is because I really feel now, okay, that's it. I'm actually an old man. And, you know, right? Satya Hari. He's retired now. All he does is read books and chant.
Right,
And cook.
I become a geezer.
You become what?
An old geezer.
Okay. So I can see just the conception of really thinking of my teacher and really thinking of the inspiration and the higher thoughts and the higher vision in life and committing myself to that. And it doesn't mean renunciation. I'm seeing Kishori, and you know, she has so many children. She has actually 4, right? But you know, she's developing a spiritual objective, and the spiritual life improves. And now her children are sitting here, listening very attentively to the thing. So it's not whether you're a sannyasi or anything, but it's that kind of thing. Wow, there's kirtan, there's love of Godhead, there's Vrindavan, there's the Bhakti Center, there's kirtans, there's kathas, there's another world of spiritual life which has a higher objective for me. And when you start to spend for that, and the taste you get for that, that is the secret. And then thoughtfulness comes in 2 ways. We discussed it already. Of dovetailing, And this is a quote from Prem Bhakti Chandrika. I don't know if I wrote it up there. Yeah. I will use lust in the service of Krishna, that kind of energy, that kind of dedication in responsibility, really. I told you that this is going to be a heavy class. I don't know if you expected some hell, brimstone, and fire here, but I'll see how well you do by how many people come back. Anger against those who are inimical towards the devotees and greed for associating with the sadhus and hearing Krishna Katha. I become bewildered only when I cannot attain my worship of the Lord. Madness will manifest when I intensely glorify the divine qualities of Krishna. In this way, I will utilize all of these. And then the last thing is next thing, with strong determination, one should give blessing. This is a whole verse, but objective. When you're hearing like this, and this is the danger, I will warn you. When you hear Shastra and you hear sacred texts, it inspires you with a higher objective in life. And when you develop the higher objective, then you move towards that. And it doesn't mean renunciation. And it doesn't mean that you're perfect either. It means you are where you are and you have an objective or goal. And then you're humble. You're humble. This is where I am. How do I move towards this? You're not guilty either, because spiritual life talks about high objectives. You're not guilty. This is where I am. I know what the proper objective is. And the proper objective is everything. Okay? And then the last verse, you go to the very, very last thing that's written there. It's an amazing thing. Because as soon as I finish this class, then I start preparing for the next one. So the conclusion. That when you do this, then you can't, when you can, all these, who is master of his own self and mind can be master of the world, but not to control it, to serve it. And you can give instructions and you won't be carried away. Okay, are there any questions? Okay, it's okay if there's no questions. Then I'm going to have a little exercise that we'll all do. It's a lot to think about and a lot to digest, isn't it? Okay, Joy, do you like my heavy preaching?
I love it.
Okay, thank you, Joy. Okay. Anybody afraid to come back next week? Next week, coming attractions. It's better. Atyahara prayasascha. The coming attractions are, we're going to talk about the obstacles to bhakti. So it's kind of an interesting, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, my understanding has always been that the controlling of those things has to be in that direct line. Like the tongue, the belly, the genitals, that direct line. But is it possible that those things can be, I don't want to say mastered, but kind of controlled out of order?
Yeah, possible. They're connected. They're connected. I'm not controlling the tongue, overeating. They're all connected, one connected to the other. But yeah, you can control them in different ways too. I'm sure people have different karma. Okay, so the exercise we're going to do is, you all have a pen and paper or something to write? We did this before and it's kind of fun. Okay. What we're going to do is free writing. And what free writing means is you just keep your pen moving on when I say, what points struck you, what you remembered from the class. And even if you don't know what to say, just say, I don't know what to say. But the pen has to continue moving. It's only for yourself. If you want, you can share it afterwards. But generally what happens is, if you don't move the pen, you think you'll have brain freeze. What will I write? But once you start moving, so many things. So what struck you about the class? And let's do that maybe for 10 minutes, okay? Begin. Just keep on writing. Just say, I don't know what to say. Just keep on moving the pen. It's only for yourself. Any point you remember. Okay? Now underline one point which you kind of really struck in your mind in the thing. What? One point. One of the sentences that really struck you is maybe of everything you wrote the most. Remember, you don't have to share if you don't want to. It's for yourself. Okay. Now just break up into groups of 2 or 3 and just maybe share your point or whatever with others and discuss what you wrote. Okay? Just break up and make sure everybody. Okay, can everybody kind of, if I can have your attention and Rati, can you put the verse back on? Okay. We're just going to finish up with, have everybody's attention. We're going to finish up with just some details and yeah, it's, we can meditate on which things we're struggling with and the difficulties they cause us and what it would look like in the future if we improved on some of them. So I have this Vacho Vegam, controlling the speech. So we're going to have an exercise. And Narayan, come here, you'll help me. Come. Okay. Give everybody one, okay? Okay? You'll all get one. But you can watch. See, this is what you do. You put it on your hand. And one type of speech, urge to speak, that ruins your life is the tendency to criticize others, not just correct them, but it's born out of something that's not good. And most of your talk about others is. There's one Shastric thing, it says that envy is in the heart, criticism is when it comes out. To criticize is worse than throwing a spear through someone's body, because the spear only pierces the body, but criticism pierces the heart. So this is just, it comes from a Christian organization, except I made my own bands that say Jai Radhe. And what it is it's to make you mindful of the urge to speak. So you'll get a practical example during the week. The idea is when you criticize someone, you have to switch it to the other hand. And if you want to develop the habit of not criticizing others and controlling this urge, if you can keep it on one wrist for 3 weeks, your whole mind and samskaras will be reoriented. Next week I can actually explain exactly how it works according to Sankhya. But basically what will happen is, when you're ready to criticize, which is coming from the manas, you're categorizing something, you're responding it according to past experience, not necessarily rationally. You're doing it because you want, not because it's right. And when you go, and you'll go, and it'll bring it to the booty. Judgmental analysis. This is not good. And if you do this, it'll reorient your mind. So I want you to keep a count. And if it goes over 15, you can stop counting. What?
50 or 50.
Okay, 15. If it goes after 15, stop counting. So that's one exercise we'll do. This was Easter, so actually there's a few more people in the class that couldn't come. I know Cybele couldn't come this week. Ashley, a few other people. So, yes.
My kids wanted to know what criticize means.
What?
My children want to know what criticize means.
Okay, I will have a special session with them after the class. Okay? I didn't mean on such a young age, but they're very evolved that they sat through the class and listened. So I'm going to meet with them personally and also reward them for the class because they were just incredible. So, the homework is, read the purport to the second chapter. If you have time, then you can read back for the first chapter. And I'm going to send you some notes on it. What I did is I ordered it according to the verse. Prabhupada speaks his purports. So I wouldn't say it's not scholarly, but the technique is not writing where you order everything. It's he's speaking from his heart and seeing what points are important. And he's speaking to the audience. So the way I organized it was in the order of the verse. And you'll see he has particular things that he wants to speak and emphasize, etc. We have a Facebook page. I think we just keep the same one. So most people are on it. Kadamba, raise your hand. If you're on the Facebook page, the video will go on the page, the PowerPoint presentation, the audio, and any notes that I give. So you want to just say your email, or people?
Sure. Well, if you go onto the Facebook page and you request to be in the group, just send me a message.
Oh, what's the Facebook page?
It's called the Nectar of Devotion from last year. I can also change. I might be able to change that. I'll have to look at it.
You'll have to change it, okay?
But if you just private message me so I know that you're in, if I don't know you personally.
Well, how do they know who you are? So
On Facebook, I'm Kamala Gutierrez, or it says Kadamba Mala, David Dassey on my page.
oh wait, it's too quick. Slow down.
Kamala Gutierrez is my Facebook.
K-Mala?
Kamala, short.
M-A-L-A-G-U.
K, just the letter K. M-A-L-A,
Yeah.
and then Gutierrez.
Dude, what is it?
Gutierrez.
What?
It's Gutierrez. It's like a last name.
And they're going to write that from that?
No. They'll see the name. They'll see I'm the administrator on the group, so you'll see the name. My name.
Okay, but you're going to change. I tell you what, you won't change the name of the group till the middle of the week.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
So it's Nectar of Devotion, Facebook. If you have any problems, her email is KMDD.
A-S-I.
Okay, KMDDASI@gmail.com.
In commercial, the other thing I can do is I can go on the Bhakti Center event page, and I can also post a link to the actual group page. That might make it a little bit easier.
Okay, we'll do that too, but okay. Okay, so no one ever really minds if the class ends a few minutes early. So any other questions? Someone had some other question about something did we speak about something?
About the prayer at the beginning?
Kadamba? Go in the folio and find the prayer, and we'll post it on the page. The Mangala Charm, but just the prayers that we do. Okay, because we only do like Om Jnana, Śrī Caitanya, Vanchakalpa.
I can put a document with just those.
Okay, we'll put it also on the Facebook page. Okay. Okay, join us for dinner if anybody wants, or some tea or whatever. But thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.